Today, I will do my report on Carl E. Seashore and James Mursell. I will discuss these two individuals, the contributions they have made to music education, their works, and some of the things they believed in. First, I'm going to start with Mr. James Mursell, and I'm going to give you background information on who this individual was. James L. Mursell was born on June 1st, 1893 in Derby, England. Mursell was educated at Edinburgh Academy in Scotland, Taunton School at Taunton, England, and at Kyrie College in Australia. After coming to the United States in 1915, he later received a doctorate in philosophy at Harvard University in 1918. He taught psychology at Lake Erie College from 1921 through 1923 and taught education at Lawrence College from 1923 through 1935. In 1935, Mursell joined the education faculty at Teachers College, Columbia University, where he eventually became the head of the Department of Music. Mursell was a prolific author, writing extensively within the fields of music, psychology, and education. Mursell was both a musician and a music teacher. Mursell believed humans were the highest form of creation and therefore had the capacity to change human behaviors and that learning would shape our behavior. For Mursell, education was guided growth requiring the differentiation and the integration of information into a meaningful context. He believed that experience was reality. Mursell believed human growth was continuous and occurred along natural developmental lines. According to Mursell, the purpose of music education was to enable humans to realize their musical potential, or stated another way, to help all individuals evolve into musical people. Mursell believed in music education where everyone had the capacity to learn and participate in musical experiences, that music and music education contribute cultural and human value as a social art towards improving society. He considered all humans to be musical beings capable of experiencing music in unique manners. Mursell believed classroom activities should relate to and reflect real-world experiences so students could transfer skills to music activities outside of the classroom. Mursell was soundly against what he called a mechanistic approach to teaching. Music education's primary emphasis must focus on the emotional and expressive nature of music rather than the technical components. The mechanistic approach required isolating musical elements, which minimized the development of musicality and led to the disconnect of musical elements from the music itself. Mursell believed mechanistic teaching focused on the product more than the process, where memorization, as opposed to the habits of musicality and the overall development of musical growth, became the primary emphasis. James L. Mursell died at his home in North Conway, New Hampshire in January of 1963. Carl Emil Seashore, born January 28, 1866, was actually born Carl Solstron, adopting the directly translated name of Seashore as had already been done by an earlier immigrant family member. He was an American psychologist and engineer who was born in Målanda, Sweden, where his family had been farmers for several generations. His parents migrated to Boone County, Iowa in 1869, settling on an 80-acre farm in a Swedish community. Seashore's father acted as a lay Lutheran preacher and served as carpenter and cabinet maker who had a considerable interest in music. Seashore, at an early age, memorized the chapters of the Bible. At the age of 13, he went to live in the home of a Lutheran pastor to improve his English speaking, social manners, and his taste in music. A year later, he became a church organist. At age 18, he came back home to help run his father's farm for a few years, and then went on to attend the Lutheran College, Gustavus Adolphus, where he received his Bachelor's of Art in 1891. Carl Seashore went on to Yale University to study philosophy with George T. Ladd, who introduced him to the new branch of philosophy called experimental psychology. Seashore, nearing 26, was happy and enjoyed working with older, more mature scholars like Ladd. While at Yale, Seashore lived with a Swedish family and attended the Lutheran Church. Although unwilling to preach sermons, he at times lectured the congregation on the relationship of philosophy and psychology to everyday life, and developed a form of presentation understandable to an intelligent but untrained audience. Upon his completion of studies, Seashore was awarded the Ph.D. from Yale in 1895. His was the first awarded Ph.D. by Yale to a student in psychology. Seashore then went on to spend the summer abroad visiting psychology laboratories in France and Germany. He then returned to Yale as a teacher in psychology. 2 years later, Seashore became an assistant professor of philosophy at Iowa State University, where he spent most of his professional life. He was a member of the faculty at Iowa from 1897 until his retirement in 1937. In 1900, Seashore married Mary Roberta Holmes, and in the next 10 years or so, they had 4 sons. In 1908, Seashore was appointed Dean of the Graduate School. There are some in history that believe Seashore's greatest contribution to society was served when he was an administrator. In that capacity, he established a number of new programs as shown in this table. Seashore's research heavily centered on educational psychology and the psychology of music and art. Carl Seashore in 1919, over a 16-year period, was the first to devise and publish a battery of tests designed to measure musical talents. He tests 5 kinds of musical ability: discrimination of pitches, dissonance, rhythmic figures, and intensity, as well as the ability to remember melodies. Seashore believed that people were either born with musical talent or they were not. He used complex machinery to make an assessment of a person's musical ability as compared to the electronics we use to make it so easy today. He created special motor drives whose speed does not vary, and the system of pulleys to generate reproducible pitches, and other machines such as the automator, the tonoscope, and tone generators. His publication list from 1893 to 1949 includes 237 books and articles. Carl Emil Seashore died October 16, 1949, in Lewiston, Idaho. The debate between Mursell and Seashore during the first part of the 20th century was based primarily on the musical elements. Seashore argued that music is best understood in terms of its elements: pitch, rhythm, dynamics, and meter, and that musical perception is a matter of understanding the elemental qualities of music. Mursell reacted against, and responded to Seashore's work, it seems like every chance he could. Their different views on the nature of musical experience provided the basis for contrasting ideologies of music education. There were a few similarities between the two of them, one being they both based their views on Western classical music. They both viewed the music of other cultures as primitive. Mursell believed that in order to arrive at a true description of musical aptitude tests, you must include musical content and that the medium through which the music is performed must be that of one or more musical instruments. Seashore countered with the argument that just as an artist must possess visual acuity to be an artist at all, a musician must possess the acoustical capabilities that his tests measure in order to comprehend music itself. Personally, I find myself identifying closer with Mursell than I do with Seashore. I will admit that the best musicians are the ones that seem to be born with musical talent, but in my experience as a band director, I have taught students who initially do not start off well, but with a little patience, by the time they're in the 8th grade or high school, they're participating in the district honor band, performing grade 2 or higher literature fairly well. I know at the time it was groundbreaking science what Seashore was doing, but I do not feel that with music you cannot accurately assess or detect a person's musical ability initially by testing them with a machine. I believe that as a music teacher you could bring out the music abilities of an untrained person given time. Thank you. This concludes my report on Mursell and Seashore.